Oh, you're so brave. It's always hard to do the talk right after lunch. You get a little sleepy. I'm going to try and make this exciting for you, but I'm just going to warn you, I'm not that exciting. I do my best, but I'm going to try to make this worth your while because this topic is actually very important to me. And as was mentioned, I've been an active angel investor for a long time. I work with a lot of founders. And one of the pieces of advice I give them is what I'm going to be talking about today, which is actually putting some thought as a founder into your business model. Because I actually believe that your business model, if you're successful, actually shapes a lot of your destiny as a company, as a culture, as a product, and as a platform. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think there's a lot of myths about business models, and unfortunately I think that some of the pop culture around startups propagates these. There's this idea that if you just build the right product, everything else you can figure out and work out. And I believe at some level, the product is the core of most technology businesses. I mean, with my background as an engineer, as a designer, I care deeply about building the right product. And we're all looking for product market fit. But unfortunately, I have to tell you, design won't save you here, right? The fintech graveyard is filled with beautiful products, well-designed, that really create value for their customers. And they have customers who love them and recommend them. And yet it wasn't enough because the business model wasn't aligned to kind of hit the milestones and generate enough activity to fund the business long term. And revenue can drive strategy. We love to think about it. I've been in so many meetings at different companies, worked at Apple, eBay, LinkedIn, Wealthfront, Dropbox, now doing Daffy. But I'll tell you, revenue in the end has a way of inserting itself in your strategy. And actually, the more successful you are, and the bigger you grow, and the larger your team becomes, the more revenue guides your strategy. I mean, like I said, my first full-time job was at Apple. And you can understand a lot about Apple and what they do strategically by the fact that their fundamental business is still largely selling devices. Right, selling hardware. That's actually what they put out into the market and charge for. We all know Google sells ads, right? How you take revenue will in the end shape which metrics you optimize for and what your team ends up delivering to you. And this is actually the saddest part, I have to tell you, for all the founders in the room, and I'm saying this with empathy, as someone who is a founder and has been an executive, et cetera, is that in the successful case, you are going to hire a lot, hopefully, I hope for you, smart, ambitious, and trustworthy people, right? You want all three of those. Only having two is a problem, by the way. But you want all three of those. And those smart, ambitious, trustworthy people will understand. You'll tell them how your business works. You'll explain to them what your vision is and where you want to get to. But in the end, they will largely focus their ideas and energy and agency on driving the business to its goals. And so even if you think you can shape it with culture or tilt against it, I mean, you can hold the fort for a while, but over the long term, you will end up hiring hundreds, thousands, or even in the successful case, tens of thousands of people. And long term, your revenue model will shape the business. I mean, I was the head of product at LinkedIn, through the IPO, and you can understand a lot about where LinkedIn turned out versus other social networks, because they chose a different business model than most social networks. And so you need to believe and need to, as a founder, that when you pick the business model, in some ways you are shaping your culture for years and maybe decades to come. So I thought today, in the spirit of building in public and sharing that with my current company, Daffy, I could use it as a little bit of a case study to kind of show you how I think about setting up a business model for success, and even share with you a few of the results. Although we're very early, I'm happy to do it. But the goal here is simple. My advice, if you take nothing away, is that your mission, your product, the market you're going after, and your business model have to all be aligned. And if your business model is out of step with the market you're going after, the product you're trying to build, and the mission you're setting your organization on, you're going to end up being disappointed. Because in the end, the business model will skew it in places you didn't want to go. So let's talk about donor advised funds. I realize that most of you don't know what donor advised funds is. Daffy actually stands for the Donor Advised Fund for You. The Donor Advised Fund is a tax-advantaged account for charity. People put money aside, they get a tax deduction for donating to charity. The money's invested tax-free, and then they can give it to any legal charity in the US. These have been around for decades. But it's a very sleepy category, but actually there's more than $250 billion in them now, and actually most analysts think it's going to $1 trillion. So this is a rich market. And by the way, there's a huge number of people who give to charity in the US, 60 million households. So it really is a big market. And so the big players, the Fidelities, the Schwabs, the Vanguards, all the big banks and brokerages have one. But they all have some things in common that's a problem with their business model. First, they charge a percentage of their fee is a percentage of assets, right? And so they, in the end, aren't really looking for customers as much as they're looking for dollars. And it turns out wealthy people have more dollars. And so, but they have to charge a certain amount to keep that business going. And so even Vanguard, who I love and is famous for low fees, charges 60 basis points, 0.6% on their donor advised fund, right? If you have a $100,000 account with them, they're going to charge you $600 a year. And that's Vanguard. Believe me, they are not the most expensive platform out there. But as a result, they chase those assets. They also have the problem that the product is designed to encourage giving to charity. That's the goal of putting money aside for charity, is to have it actually go to a charity. And yet, it turns out that every time someone gives money to a charity, they lose revenue, right? If you have a $100,000 account with Fidelity Charitable and you give $10,000 to a hospital, they just lost 10% of their revenue. And so they have to fight that with a great culture and great people, but their revenue is pushing them to hoard the assets a bit. They end up focusing on the wealthy because it turns out it's not 1,000 times more work to have a $100 million account than a $100,000 account. And so they end up emphasizing on a smaller group of customers who have more money, which means that they invest in people, in concierge service, in people operations, instead of investing in technology. And so obviously I had the hubris to believe with my co-founder that this was a place where a new technology company with a different model could make a difference. And so the idea behind Daffy was simple. We would take this great financial product, the Donor Advised Fund, and reinvent it around a simple mission. We want to help people be more generous more often, right? If you want to put aside cash for charity, well, take it. If you want to put aside stock, mutual funds, ETFs, we even take every crypto that Coinbase supports. Anything that you are willing to put aside for charity, we want to help you do it. And we think that that helps a lot of people with something that's very meaningful in their lives. And so our mission is simple. Help people be more generous more often. It is a big market. There's 60 million households in the US that give to charity every year. Oh, sorry about that. And the customer relationship we want is different because we went out with a different business model. Instead of charging a percentage of assets, we decided to go based on a model that we borrowed from the nonprofit sector, but is super familiar in tech, which is a membership-based model, like a subscription. Most of our members pay $3 a month for this account that lets them put money aside for charity. And we have higher tiers, right? We have a family plan, and we have a kind of a high-end tier for people who want more customization. But our goal is simple, right? We think that people give not just once or once a year, that they give for their entire lives. And in fact, the data says it increases as they age and they grow. And so we wanted to build a platform and a business that was focused on how people give through their whole lives, right? Basically, to translate into metrics, a low churn business. And so that's how we did. We went with this disruptive model. And so it's simple, it's scalable, transparent. Everyone knows how we charge. There's no secret fees. It's very hard to find out how the other donor advised funds charge. And we have engagement-based tiers. Remember, our mission, we hope that people will join and they'll stay with us. And they'll like it so much that over time they will contribute more to these accounts and they will give more to charity. Literally, our success metric is watching people actually contribute more and donate more through their life cycle with Daffy. And we based our tiers on that, right? Actually, our pricing is based on the average annual contributions to make. The more you put aside for charity every year, right, bumps you into higher tiers with more features that are optimized for people who give more. And so we have this alignment between the market segments that we target and the subscriptions. This might sound counterintuitive, but when I was back at Dropbox, when I was back at LinkedIn, one of the big epiphanies on the revenue side was that actually if you offer a subscription business, your tiers should map to your market segments. The features you enable, their willingness to pay, all those things are aligned not around specific features in the product, but the subscription tier that they're assigned to. And this is the alignment in that type of business between the product and the business model. And so the results have been phenomenal so far. Actually, I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, obviously no one thinks that you're going to have a phenomenal business just helping people do a good thing, give money to charity, but it's turned out that with some good first principles thinking, you can end up in a very good place. This is a stack of our quarterly cohorts, and you can kind of see they're doing what you want them to do. which is expand over time, right? The net revenue retention actually expands over time. There's always a little bit of churn, but we have very little. It turns out the product works. People come in, they don't churn, very low rates, and as they use it, they like it. They contribute more, which bumps them up in membership tiers. And a lot of our members go from $3 a month to $5 a month to $20 a month. And in fact, that's so successful that if you look at our net revenue retention compared to some best-in-class consumer businesses, having had some of these eras, it is very hard to get your net revenue retention over 90%. The best-in-class get to 100% because you always have some churn. Netflix, Dropbox are famously do this well, although they do some price increases from time to time to make this happen. Snowflake B2B is a little easier because when you sign up companies, they grow in employees, they grow in usage, and so you can actually get to 120, 130, even 140%. Snowflake is one of the best. Our revenue retention now at Daffy is over 200%. And I don't think it'll stick with that long term, but that's why you see this hockey stick in revenue, building out the business model, because we focused our business model to be aligned with our product goals, right? We wanted to build a product that people stayed with a long time, that led them to give more. We set up a revenue line and a revenue model that actually matches that success. And so I could tell my team of engineers and designers, incredibly talented folks, that if they make the product successful, the business will be successful. And no form of alignment is perfect in business. There's always tensions and trade-offs, et cetera. But the more aligned your model is, I really advise you as founders to put some thought into it because it'll make your job easier of getting all those brilliant people you work with running in the same direction, even when you're not there, even when the idea is not yours, even when you haven't vetted everything. And so if you take anything away from this after lunch at Startup Grind, I'm just going to say, I really want you to believe that your business model matters. This is one of the most important strategic decisions you will make as a founder, and you can't outsource it. It's not going to go to your head of sales or revenue officer. It's not your marketer. It's not your CTO. It's going to have to be you. And it's because it has to do a lot with the destiny of your company. If you sell advertising, you will end up optimizing for engagement and click-through eventually. That's just a fact, right? If you have a business model like marketplaces, I worked at eBay, if it's transaction-based, you will push towards driving more transactions. And if you do a subscription-based model, you're going to optimize to how you can lower the cost of acquisition, right? Lower churn and keep them for a long time, and then figure out ways to deliver more value, right? So you can justify higher tiers. And so in some ways, this choice you make is the choice about the product you want to build, the team you're going to want to build, and most importantly, to all of us, the company you end up building. So thank you.